Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. How you guys doing today? Today we're just gonna continue reading a book we've been reading. It's the first one you see right here. In Plain Sight, Old World Records in Ancient America. Alright, by Gloria Farley. We read chapter 1 and 2. So we're gonna read chapter 3. It's a physical book, so we're gonna read it like this. I'm gonna record it. Hopefully you guys can see as much as possible. Alright, so again, this is the book we're gonna read in Plain Sight. Really good book. Couple books I'm going through, or I've gone through. The Descendants of Guinea Jim. We read this and we showed that Jabari's ancestors are actually the one he was claiming, right? The Gibson family of the Bahamas. Alright, the one he was claiming to be African was actually a black Scot. This is a book we're gonna get into as well. I haven't even got into it yet. The Story of Man. This book is from the 1800s. Alright, as you guys can see, there's some heavy drop in this book. So it talks about, all the civilizations and has a lot of images here and there. But some of the information, some of the images, very revealing. Alright, so we're gonna get into this one soon. Look at that, Japanese. Ancient History of Japan. We're gonna get into that, alright? The Story of Man. It was hard to find a PDF, so I had to buy a physical copy. And we got a Encyclopedia of Herbal Medicine. Really good book. We're gonna go through this book as well. Alright. In my Keeping It Natural series. Because I like to try to make live a healthy lifestyle, So, and I like to influence people to do the same, right? And take care of your temple, your body, your soul, where the spirit is, right? We don't want to grow old, and we're all gonna die, but we don't want to die of horrible things, right? So at least be able to walk, function when we're older. So this is a great book we're gonna get into. All right. The Bristol Registers of Servants Sent to Foreign Plantations. So much drop in here. A lot of people's ancestors here. Alright, let me just show you. We ain't kidding, right? Alright, so all these people being sent to Virginia as slaves, slash servants. If you're new to my channel and you're like, oh, it's not the same as slavery, indentured servant, then there's a lot you got to learn. It's a lot you got to learn about the slave system here in the Americas, North America, especially up there. William Dudson, he was sent to Philip Harris, 4 years in Jamaica. Jamaica, Nevis, Jamaica, Nevis. Right, all these people from Bristol working on plantations. Barbados, Nevis, you see the names. A lot of people's ancestors here. A lot of these are so-called black Europeans, Negro Europeans, not people with tans. We're not just talking about tans here. All right, there's a whole list of this, many pages. And the way they found this, it was locked up behind this wall, bricked up, and they were remodeling this building, and they found it. They found this in there, the original sources, obviously. All right, so keeps going. Look at that, Negro question. Of course, I got one copy. I got a lot in PDF too, or Amazon. Virginia's Colonial Soldiers. All right, this is a really good book we've gone through. It has descriptions of some of the people. Let's see if we can get some right here. So, just for example, it says muster roll of troop of light horse commanded by Captain Robert Stewart, May 1757 at Maidstone. Enlisting Captain Robert Stewart, right? The Stewarts, Stuart, Sergeant William Hughes, so on. So what you got here is the given name, the entry date, age, size, trade, complexion, and country. William Hughes, dark, 5'7". He's from England. He's dark skinned and he's from England. All right. John Winterbottom, farmer. He's brown and he's from England. This guy's ruddy, from Virginia. Brown, ruddy, dark, dark, ruddy, dark, Maryland. All right. Scotland, dark. You guys see? Let me show you. I ain't making this up. John Eleanor, laborer, brown, complexion, from Germany. Where's all the pale skin people? Huh? Dark, 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 ruddy. Do you guys see? Check out the videos we did on this. I went through the whole list. Virginia's colonial soldiers. You know, based on the ones that actually had this description of complexions, I would say it's at least 90% of them were melanated people. And from different parts. You know, not just, you know, from the Americas, but from Europe. Okay. Rock Lake. The Lost Pyramid of Rock Lake. We read like 3 or 4 chapters, 5 or 6. I forgot. We got like 3 videos on this, 3 or 4. You know, I just read it, and you guys loved it, and I appreciate that. And yeah, pretty good. Great book right here, right? Symbols of our Celto-Saxon heritage. This is a lot of people's heritage, right? The tribal emblems. You guys see? All right. So right here we got the emblems of Dan, right? Snake and the horse. The tribe of Dan. Ephraim. All right. Israelite tribes and the Anglo-Saxon heritage, right? Got another Negro question, part 7. All right, so I support, right? I learn from a lot of people, see what everybody got to say. 911, Iberia rescue, or the ancient Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew, 911, yo. 911. Okay, let me show you guys. Pretty cool. All right, and it's like, you know, pretty cool workbook. Pretty good brother, he sent me the book. Been learning from it. The Self-Sufficient Backyard for the Independent Homesteader. You gotta grow your own food. We got the guide. So again, we're gonna read this one in my Keeping It Natural series as well. Alright? Don't worry guys, I got a lot of content coming. I got a lot of content that's gonna help. So again, we're gonna get into our book. Let me know if the music's too loud. So this is the book again. I just want to show the cover inside. Alright, in plain sight. So we're gonna go to chapter 3. Alright. As you guys can see, they signed their names, but we already read chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 2, it shows all the inscriptions that had like different ships. You know, what appears to be ships all over the place. You know, so we read chapters 1 and 2. Really good information. You know, we were selling the world. You guys know. You saw my navigation videos. Alright. Pretty cool. So this is what we actually went over already. Alright. All these ships. Alright, as you guys can see, Utah, comparison, California, Colorado. Look at that big ship. Colorado. Alright, so really good information. Again, we're going to go to chapter 3. It says, they signed their names. Name, though it seem but a superficial and outward matter, yet it carrieth much impression and enchantment. Francis Bacon. Alright, so they're just quoting people here. The desire to leave one's name for all to see seems to be a modern trait, suppressed in most of us. Fortunately, this desire was not suppressed in the ancient visitors to America, who left their marks at many sites. The names that these visitors left, together with features of the sites, tell us much more about the writers. The names of Emilianus, Rata, Yanni, and Glom will be mentioned in other chapters. Some ancient people inscribed their names on stone as identification or as autographs. A few could be classified as linguists, writing their names in two or even three scripts and languages. Maba the Hermit. The person most real to me who carved his name on stone is Maba. I have sat in his kitchen, understood his circumstances, and felt his anxiety and loneliness, stranded alone in a strange land. He lived perhaps 2,000 years ago in a small bluff shelter in what is now eastern Oklahoma. It is most beautiful setting. Maba came to my attention because of several photographs given to me in January 1975 by Dr. I.C. Gunning, a geologist. The prints led me to the photographer Wallace Soliman of Hartshorne, Latimer County, Oklahoma, and to his assistant, high school senior Steve Suter. Solomon and Suter knew of a archaeological site near Gowen, Oklahoma. A bluff senior, Steve Suter, Solomon and Suter knew of an archaeological site near Gowen, Oklahoma, a bluff shelter which had been robbed by pot hunters from California. If only we could see the artifacts that they removed or know the other evidence that they destroyed during their unfortunately undocumented excavations, we could add greatly to Maba's history. Solomon and Suter had attempted to finish the post-hunters' excavation by orthodox methods, marking the area in squares and keeping records. They found deer bones, teeth, and charcoal. Perhaps most importantly, they observed that the bluff shelter had once been partitioned with stone walls. However, their best efforts were ruined by local partying teenagers who kicked over partitions and displayed everything that had been uncovered. The same month the photographs were received, I visited the site with colleague John Schuller. Several unexpectedly pleasant surprises awaited us. The first was the absolute beauty of the setting. We walked along a plateau. The ground was softly padded with pine needles. Then we climbed down a 10-foot embankment and ledge to the small bluff shelter. It was situated immediately near to a clear running stream, fed by 7 springs. The little stream led to Gaines Creek, where other important inscriptions have been found. Gaines Creek eventually runs into the South Canadian Arkansas and Mississippi rivers. The photographs which had been taken by Solomon showed petroglyphs on a pinkish stone wall near the bluff shelter. The vertical panel included a canoe-like boat with an occupant. All those strange symbols appeared under and to the right of the boat. The petroglyph was tentatively dismissed as a cowboy in a canoe. It was the contents of the shelter itself that drew my immediate interest. While excavating, Solomon and Suter had uncovered a large boulder of considerable weight. Near its right end was carved a deep hole and several lines of lettering, figure 3-1. The conical hole was not the common shallow American Indian used with a mano to grind corn. It was 9 inches deep and 6 inches wide at the top, a mortar and pestle type grinder. The pestle was missing. Surrounding the mortar were 3 nut holes of the size and shape to hold nuts while they were being cracked. The script consisted of 1 line to the upper left of the mortar, 1 line under it, and 2 vertical rows to the right. The plainly cut letters measured from 1 to 1.5 inches high. The image here. In April, Schuller and I returned to the site to trace and photograph. With us that day were relatives of the landowner, a general science teacher and geology student at Oklahoma State University. The last 2 men had helped to excavate the boulder. Also present were 2 men who had seen the site before it was ever disturbed, and who verified that the large boulder had been buried. This is probably why the lettering is still clear. Alright, so what they're saying is that this was buried. People try to say, oh no, that was cowboys they were drawing. Now, this was, nobody had ever undug this. This was the first time they found, this inscription, is what she's saying. Carefully traced and verified by latex mold, all inscriptions were sent to Dr. Barry Fell, who replied the remarkable mixture of North African and Iberian punic. That's what the inscription was, alright? The original. Seen in this one cave shelter epitomizes the mixture of North African and Iberian roots that make up a great part of many Amerindian dialects. Do you guys hear that? So remember the philology videos we have, where we're showing the relationship with different nations based on their philology, what they're speaking, their languages. And, so that makes sense. America's a true old world again. So Fell found that the lettering on the boulder includes 3 labels of kitchen equipment. The words for grinding grain were repeated 3 times. Figure 3.2. At the bottom, read right to left, was DS, written in Numidian letters. Okay? To express in the Iberian Punic language the words Dasha at the bottom right, reading bottom to top, was again DS, a Numidian script. At the top and to the right of the mortar, hole reading downward, was once more DS, but this time Punic Iberian letters were used. Below this last Dasha, reading right to left, were the letters GN, which form the Punic words Ghana, a prayer meaning, may we be free from want. To the right of this, the Numidian letters Ma'o are used for the Libyan phrase yes indeed. The latter 2 inscriptions were written upside down. Perhaps Maba knelt on the opposite side of the boulder and leaned over its top while carving them. Okay? So he's saying, hey, he's finding a character here. And you guys heard all the different languages they're finding here. Again, what Barry Fell emphasized, and all these epigraphic studied people or researchers, is that you're finding older form of these languages, of these inscriptions here in America than what they're finding in Europe. So he's saying, it says, Waha, Jadaha Bam, Maba stayed here, a hermit. For grinding grain, yes indeed. May we be free from want, for grinding grain, for grinding grain. Do you guys hear that? The corn, man. They're talking about that grain, the corn. Of great importance is the script to the left of the metate, which reads from right to left using the Tartessian alphabet for the Punic language. Phil explained. Tartessian is the language of Tarshish, near modern Seville, Spain, a Semitic tongue which I deciphered last year. Tarshish was destroyed around 500 BC by Celts in the pay of the Carthaginians. After that, it appears that many Tartessians migrated to North and South America. Alright, you guys hear that? Appears. He's guessing there because he's finding the language right here. So he's like, they had to have come, because they still think that everything started on that side of the world. But he's seeing it in reverse, is what I've been trying to tell you guys. They went from here over there. They brought this language over there. What became known to them as Numidian, Libyan. You guys get it? And go to the next page. Hope you guys enjoying so far. The line transliterates right to left to MBHDY. It means Maba stayed here. To the left of it is added in Numidian script Waha, meaning hermit. Another inscription composed very old and rounded symbols was cut into the gray stone at the top rim of the shelter. The inscription marked in Numidian Wa, meaning Alas, the standard sign for a burial. Below it was written again, Alas, in Iberian Punic letters. In the same script to the left is written Y, or Ya, meaning by fortune, or unlucky man. There also was found GT, forgot, a man named meaning skinny or scrawny. The whole reads unlucky man, got, alas, Fell remarked. Apparently God met with an accident and was buried somewhere nearby. This is ancient, but I am at loss to understand why the inscription is upside down. Alright. Grave marker forgot, according to Fell, Maba's shelter, Oklahoma. This is what they're finding here in the Americas, guys. Remember and decide it was obvious that God could not have been buried in the stone floor of the shelter, but somewhere in the plateau above. The grieving Maba on his knees near his home, therefore, carved a memorial on the rim of the shelter, which would appear to be upside down when viewed from the cave floor. All this information staggers the mind. What was Maba, the literate man from the old world who could speak and write in 3 languages and scripts, doing alone in the interior wilderness of a new continent? That's because he's seeing it in reverse. Apparently, he did not add the pitiful phrase, a hermit, until after the loss of his skinny friend. Did Gad die of malnutrition? I could emphasize with Maba's situation realizing he could never find his way back to his old home alone, deciding to stay in this lovely place by the dependable water supply, hunting and gathering and grinding his seeds to be free from want. He built the stone partitions in order to have a safe place he could sleep, warmed by fire, protected from bears, wolves, and mountain lions. In search for other clues, I turned my attention to the petroglyphs on the pink stone panel near Maba's kitchen, especially the boat and its occupant. The man sat in the stand with a paddle facing the boat. His face, under a brim hat with a high rounded crown, was in profile. Under the boat and to the right were strange symbols. Although originally thought to be modern graffiti, it was fortunately recorded anyway by tracings, photographs, a latex mold, and plaster cast which was studied in light from different angles. Alright? And that's what they're saying. That's his mob on his canoe in Oklahoma. Okay? It is the shape of the boat which seems important. If one can discount the disproportionate size of the occupant to the boat, a feature common in early Mediterranean maritime art, and look only at the outline of the vessel, it is plain to see that it is no canoe. It is the same shape as the Mesopotamian reed ship model illustrated in Thor Heyerdahl's Early Man in the Ocean, alright? Just like the ones in Mesopotamia, huh? The bow is high and curls inward, necessarily part of the construction to keep reed boat afloat. A convincing argument for antiquity of the petroglyphs was found in an illustration in a book about ancient Libya, which showed a 2,000-year-old mosaic now in the National Archaeological Museum in Tripoli. The mosaic was divided into 9 squares. One of the squares showed large figures of ancient Libyans in a relatively smaller sized reed boat. The figures wore brim hats and high rounded crowns, very similar to the Maba petroglyph. A close-up of one of these hats is found in Fell's Saga Americana, taken by his photographer Peter Garfield during a visit to the National Archaeological Museum in Tripoli. Other figures in mosaic show men holding an oar, throwing out an anchor, and pulling in nets. Some of these men also wear hats of the same style. The Oklahoma petroglyph may be a self-portrait of Maba showing the type of boat in which he traveled. The symbols near the boat are not understood beyond the symbols on the same slab of stone. Is inside a 4-inch petroglyph which may depict another small boat. The curved lines above a straight hole shows the interior of the boat. The loop-like projection at one end could be a handle to pull the boat ashore, or placed to a lash a steering oar. Perhaps this boat was used by Maba for fishing in the small stream near his home. Who was Maba? From what country did he come? By deduction, he was a Libyan who had migrated to Tarshish in Spain and then to America with a shipload of fellow travelers who died of disease or some catastrophe, leaving Maba the only survivor. Alright, so he just did a whole lot of he just created that whole story, guys. Alright, so he's trying to make sense of what he's finding, and I respect Barry Fell and Gloria because, they created these books for us to be able to see these things, and, but they, we strongly know and believe, but more know because we've proven it, that this is the true old world, and we've been seeing it in reverse this whole time. Everybody's been saying all these people coming over here and they're finding all this stuff from the old world all over the Americas, but what happened? None of them are here. What happened? So all of a sudden it's just so-called Mongols here only? What happened to all these people? It's a lot they're leaving out. Says here the site was being vandalized and had to be protected. Another trip was made on May 1st at the same year, accompanied by Gunnin, Salman, Dale Murphy, and by special invitation, Dr. Don Wyckoff, the Oklahoma State archaeologist. There was no time to give Wyckoff all the necessary background. As we bounced along in a truck to the site, it was explained that a boulder had kitchen top, incised an ancient script was translated, and that there were petroglyphs of old world visitors. Knowing Wyckoff's rigorous training in archaeology, but his dearth of knowledge in epigraphy, it was also explained that he could not be expected to immediately believe the evidence he would see, and he replied that he certainly could not. At the site, Gunning knelt to inspect the lettering. Wyckoff did not. but he was interested in the bluff shelter as an archaeological site worthy of protection, and that was enough at the time. In the autumn of 1980, Schuller Solomon and I again returned to check the site. When we reached the shelter, we found that the boulder was still intact with its writing, but the petroglyphs on the cliff wall had been utterly ruined by blobs and initials in red spray paint. Although dismayed by the wanton destruction, we were grateful that it has been previously fully recorded. As we walked back along the plateau, there we saw another conical mortar in the bedrock. It was shallower than the big one on the boulder. From the shelter not far away lay the cone-shaped pestle. With a sense of reverence, I wondered if my hands were the first to hold it since Maba's, as I ground a few acorns. We did not remove the precious artifact, but put it a little distance away so a casual observer would not realize that the two stones belonged together. The landowner was notified of the find and perhaps he rescued it later. In November 1983, the landowner appealed for help in preserving the site, which was threatened by strip mining. Wyckoff was alerted and said he would do his utmost to see the state laws concerning archaeological sites were enforced. If Fell is correct in his translations, and I am right in my deductions, here is the record of Maba the intelligent, Maba the literate, Maba the lonely hermit who wrote his thoughts. They are passed on so that he will not be forgotten. Sorely the Sun. In October 1970, Charles E. Furlow of Decatur, Arkansas, donated a dim photograph of a carved stone he had found in the woods near Maysville in extreme northwest Arkansas. Furlow said he had tried to find the stone again, but had not been successful. The photograph showed only a row of straight lines and one curved line. As I had not yet heard of ogham writing, the photograph was buried in ever-growing files. However, in 1975 it was recorded and sent to Fell in the hope that he might discern something of interest. Fell wrote back, indistinct but seems to read Muim, MSML, and means surely son of stag without antlers. This is Old Gaulish, in ogham script, 200 to 100 BC. We will report Celtic settlements in New England in September. This is the autograph of Surely. This is the inscription, right? Ogham, in more original form of ogham that was found here. Alright? The Maysville inscription was the first time that Fell had seen the diphthong UI, the curved line below the streamline in an American inscription. Were two generations of Gaulish Celts in interior America together, Surely and his father, or did the elders still roam in ancient France, sans antlers? Alright, so two generations, huh? Again, they seen it in reverse. Mado the bear hound. Another Gaul by the name of Mado left his signature, as translated by Fell, on a western Oklahoma boulder near a tributary of the Simaron River. The script was discovered and traced in June 1978. The name means bearhound and was expressed in Celtic ogham script. Autograph of Mado. Now again, remember he's just, adding, trying to fill in the story. He's like, okay, trying to figure it all out. He's saying Celtic person came, again, sounds like just some American indigenous people who wrote this originally, right? These same people most likely ended up over there in Europe and brought this language over there, this writing form. Again, this is an older form than what they're finding in Europe. It says here, Wally, Friend of God. A wonderful book about rock art in Texas. Contains apparent ancient inscriptions. Fell was able to translate some of these inscriptions as names. One inscription is from the site of Rocky Dell, Ogham County, which is in the Texas Panhandle, on a tributary of the South Canadian River. Photographs from this site show many petroglyphs similar in style to those found to the north in the Oklahoma Panhandle and in southeastern Colorado. Much of the Rocky Dell paintings and petroglyphs are now obliterated, and for our knowledge of them we are indebted to Lieutenant Emil Weeks Whipple of the U.S. Army, who visited this site in 1853. Whipple was part of a group traveling from Fort Smith, Arkansas, to Los Angeles to determine the most feasible route for a railroad. A 3-inch stack of his original sketches are in the Oklahoma Historical Society. library, and his comments are invaluable. He described a petroglyph of a ship at Rocky Dell, but unfortunately, the sketch accompanying the description has been lost for 100 years. The Rocky Dell site contains a mortar and pestle grinder like Maba's, who also lived on a tributary of the South Canadian River. Fell translated an inscription from the ceiling of the bluff shelter at the Rocky Dell site. As recorded, it appears to be comprised of only 4 letters. Fell's comments are as follows. Reference to Deringer's tables of letters, alright, and shows that the above inscription reads from right to left in South Iberic script. The language, as we now know, is related to Arabic. The first 3 letters are well-known Semitic, Shemitic name Wali, meaning friend or friend of God. It offers in Sapphoetic as well as Arabic. The last sign is more problematic. I think it is a double letter, digraph, made up of G and W, and representing the word WG equal Wagi, signatory signature signed. So Wali, his signature. Alright, that's what he's talking about right here. And he's calling it the autograph. Alright. Iberic, Shemitic, Semitic. It says here Sarah the righteous. The second Texas inscription, which was pointed out to Fell from the same reference, is located in the extreme western part of the state at a site called Hueco Tanks. Fell commented in a 1987 update. Since you found this in the book The Rock Art of Texas Indians, other South Semitic scripts, Semitic, Shemitic, have turned up in America. Sabian, Sapphitic, and Talmudim. Alright? Guys, everything. You guys are starting to add up. You see all the inscriptions that we've shown in previous videos. Everybody's showing, look at all these old world inscriptions being found here. Different types of Semitic, Shemitic. All are similar and vary widely as to the letter forms. The above shows features of all 3, and the phonetic values, and therefore uncertain. The date could be as late as 200 AD. The language is Arabic. The letters are to be read from right to left. Possible readings are 1. Kala, a personal name meaning gloomy. Salah, or Sali, a personal name meaning righteous or pious or devout. I prefer the last reading. It is worth noting that Wali and Salah probably never saw nor heard of each other. Western Texas is a big place, and they may not have arrived at the same time period. From the location of his autograph, we may deduce that Wali came up the South Canadian River via the Arkansas and the Mississippi. Salah may have traveled further west in the Gulf of Mexico and entered the Rio Grande. They did have in common a Mediterranean origin, a love of exploration, and if their names are meaningful, both were devout. It is obvious that both had the desire to identify themselves on enduring stone. Alright, so again, this starts to hijack a little bit. The only reason he's saying they're from the Mediterranean is because he's finding this language or script that he thinks originated over there only. Again, America's a true old world. We're seeing it in reverse. Alright, that's the autograph of Salah, Western Texas. Alright. The Turkey Mountain inscriptions. Any place that has a major river bordered by high cliffs with smooth surfaces is worthy of inspection. For ancient inscriptions, such as a site is Turkey Mountain at Tulsa, Oklahoma, immediately by the broad Arkansas River. In 1972, I had been given sketches of inscriptions and petroglyphs made by Gary Coover, then a Tulsa high school student. It was noted that one of them agreed with a description which had been given to me in 1968 by Randall Wells. A first visit to the site was not accomplished until June of 1975, when I was guided by Mike Long. We walked down a railroad track which runs between the river and the cliffs with no space to spare. We decided that he would explore down the railroad tracks while I recorded and studied the walls of a small cave adjacent to them. Although the cave was filled with letters of an ancient type, the surfaces were too small to hope for a translation, so I started to walk down the tracks. Beyond the curve, there was the sound of an approaching train. There were three choices: climb the cliff, jump down the bank toward the river, or duck back into the cave. The cliff bank were covered with a luxuriant growth of poison ivy, so only the third choice was feasible. I backtracked running. The refuge was reached in time to watch the locomotive wheels pass less than 10 feet from my face. You guys heard that? Crazy, huh? Our main goal was to copy and photograph four symbols on a boulder very near the tracks. We found it to be a big slab of stone, 10 feet long and 6 feet high, proposed against a steep bank of earth. The four letters in a straight line, each measured from 8 to 4 inches in height. They were pegged and looked very old. The first two letters appeared to be early Greek. The last was in Numidian alphabet, but the third was a puzzle. Alright, they're finding so-called Greek over here. Multi-alphabet inscriptions. Alright, so when we're saying Greeks, they're talking about the Amazons and these so-called Greeks going Hesperides. Come on now. Feld tentatively translated the line as a signature, but said this would be true only if the third symbol were separated into two parts. He was assured that it was firmly connected, so there the matter stood. The third symbol seemed vaguely familiar, but it could not be found in any of the charts of ancient alphabets. While reading Egyptian references, I suddenly sighted an illustration of a painting on the wall of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. In the illustration, a priest in a leopard skin robe holds a tool out toward the mummy of the king. It is the iron ur-hekau, instrument used in the ceremony of opening the mouth of the dead, so that the deceased may again be able to speak in the afterworld. This tool is also shown in the hands of the jackal-headed god Anubis as he performs the ceremony. It is also a standard hieroglyph, okay? So this is what he's talking about, and remember, Anubis is Sholot. Sholot is from here. Anubis is originally the real Anubis. Sholot, they're calling Anubis. He's from here. We've already proven that. Check out the video I got on that. Okay? So it says in 1980, I took a trip to Egypt, which included a visit to the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Long lines of tourists were each given 10 seconds on a platform inside the inner shrine to gaze at the contents. My 10 seconds were spent staring not down at the sarcophagus but at the wall painting, which contained the same hieroglyphs as in the Oklahoma inscription, guys. Come on. Now, how can an inscription with one symbol, each in 3 or 4 alphabets, be translated? The first and second letters, the bisected oval and the triangle, are not confined to the ancient Greek alphabet, but also appear in the South Semitic ones. In combination with Egyptian and Numidian symbols, they would more logically be South Semitic. If people from North Africa were traveling together, if, seen in reverse, later we found on the same Turkey mountain boulder a dim directional sign pointing downriver. Could the stone slab be like a highway sign intended for all the peoples whose alphabets were represented? Alright? So remember, when I'm saying in reverse, we just, read in the book Shadow of Atlantis, about the Etruscans, Iberians. We know about the Karens. Carthaginians are looking suspect too. A lot of the Celts, a lot of these people that ended up in Iberian Peninsula, were supposedly Atlanteans, right? From Atlantis. Well, look, you're finding everything here in Atlantis. There you go. The bearded profile. A second chance to explore the Turkey mountain area occurred on New Year's of 1976. The last day of 1975 was a warm and sunny 70-degree Fahrenheit, and the promise of assistance from a group of college students was heard. During the night, the temperature dropped to 20 degrees. Nevertheless, the next morning at the meeting place was one young man, Bart Torbert, considerate and respectful. Torbert was to assist me ably many times during the coming years. In order to drive as close to the site as possible, the car was parked in a private lot of the city's sewage plant, not knowing that this was forbidden. Later, we found a sign on the windshield threatening a tollway. Meanwhile, bundled to our ears and carrying paper crayons, a gallon of liquid latex labeled "Do not allow to freeze," and a paintbrush, we walked down the track to a point where there was more distance between the track and the cliffs. Alright, so this is figure 314, says Peckled Profile, Turkey Mountain, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Alright, you guys see that? Wow. Gwen the Linguist. Below the petroglyph of the face was a space where a huge slab of stone had split away from the cliff, forming a halfway about 3 feet wide. Pegged on the inner wall were the legends Los Cave and Bad Dog. We turned our attention to an inscription on the cliff to the left of the profile, at chest height. It consisted of vertical lines which intersected a horizontal streamline formed by a deep natural crack. Below were 3 symbols which looked like the English letters PIA. I was reasonably certain that the top line formed ogham script. I suspected that the 3 capital letters might also be ancient script because of the shape of the A. Alright, and I guess this is what he's talking about. So it's here, bilingual autograph of Gwen. We got ogham and something else here. As usual, the tracing of this inscription was sent to Fell. He replied, "The ogham script is GWN, meaning Gwen or Gwen, masculine for a fair, one of the commonest Celtic names and equivalent to the English white." He also said concerning the letters PIA, "I think this must be modern initials." To this I replied, "Look again. The lettering is all of the same age, packed with the same tool, and this is not a Roman A. The crossbar is bent down like the Iberic form of the letter." Soon a note was received from Fell saying, "Congratulations again. Your second sense for antiquity triumphs. Upon your repeated urging to think about PIA again, I find that this is a fine bilingual PIA, Paya'a white and punic." The latex mold, which was later made and sent to Fell, was photographed and used in his book, America BC Fell wrote, "Gwyn, an early Celtic explorer, put his autograph in 2 languages on a rock face on the Turkey Mountain near Tulsa, Oklahoma. The inscription below the ogham reading from left to right are the North Iberian letters Paya'a, spelling a Punic word that also means white. The date of the inscription is perhaps around 500 BC. 3 years later, I received a telephone call from the Tulsa Police Department informing me that I was being prosecuted for stealing Tulsa's rock. Astounded, I asked what rock, and was told that it was the one published in the book America BC. I said, "Sir, the inscription is on a cliff, and the cliff is still there." The caller apologized. The light of Fell's verification in 1976 that a Celt from Iberia had stood at the site, the profile with long beard was reconsidered. In searching references, I found a dimly remembered illustration with the chart of the Iberic alphabet in Volume 2 of David Diringer's The Alphabet. On a jagged fragment of an excavated vase from Lyria, Spain, rode 2 Iberian horsemen, down wearing snood-like headdresses, and both with the same receding chins and prominent noses. In line with their foreheads, one of them had a long, pointed beard. Okay, this is what he's talking about. Was there the portrait of an Iberian on a Tulsa cliff? The profile was pegged in rather a crude manner. So was the Lost Cave in Bad Dog. It was rumored that in 1920 a hobo had lived at the site in a shelter he had made. There were gauges at the entrance to the narrow hallway, as if someone had hung a gate. There were notches cut in the top of the slab and also into the cliff opposite, as if someone had laid boards across for a roof. Had a hobo named Los pegged the profile? Latex molds of all the petroglyphs concerned indicate that a different tool was used for the profile than was used for the Lost Cave and Bad Dog inscriptions. Saria the farmer. My assistant Schuler and Murphy happened to be students at universities in Tulsa during the spring of 1976. They explored Turkey Mountain and reported more inscriptions one of which was on top of the slab of stone which stood upright by the profile and the Gwen Bilingual. I had to see what they found. The day we scheduled to go to the site was rainy and turned into a deluge as we walked down the track. With us also was Harold Arter, a co-worker. Our cameras were useless. We could take photographs with water running over the lens. Upon reaching the upright slab, we noted that it was 12 feet tall on the inner side but had 30-foot drop-off on the side toward the track. It was about 3 feet wide on top. Our intention was to get me onto the top to inspect an inscription that Murphy had described. But how? Schuler had a plan. Since Murphy was a young and slightly built, he could be boosted part way. We would scramble up first. Schuler, being 6 feet 3 inches tall, made a good step ladder. He would stand against the slab. Then came the tricky part. I would climb onto a 6-inch shelf of stone protruding from the cliff side opposite the slab. From the shelf, I would step across onto Schuler's shoulders. Then Murphy would pull up. This plan was carefully considered. I was wearing heavy hiking boots, a man's raincoat, a plastic headscarf, and gloves which I took off to wring out while water ran off my nose and chin and cascade behind my glasses. Why not try? Soon I was on top. How could the slanting surface be slick with mud? On a later trip, I studied the inscription more carefully. It is always frustrating to find an inscription damaged by vandalism or by natural weathering. Obviously, this can make an inscription difficult or even impossible to read, even though a careful and correct copy is submitted to the translator. This is a price we often pay in the search for ancient writing. Here the symbols on top of the slab had been spoiled by the elements. The inscription consists of 3 lines. Above the rectangle are 3 letters, the first of which is spalled in the center, an arrow pointing upriver. Within the rectangle are either 9 or 10 symbols, with the first and third broken off the top. The fourth and fifth are problematical. Working within these limitations, Fell stated that the top 3 letters read from right to left are a name in Iberian, Punic, Zra, or Saria. The meaning is farmer, the same meaning as the English name George. Fell also stated that an Iberian king who left his record in New York has this same name. The letters within the rectangle also Iberic Punic, reading from right to left, KSRPI, or continue on this way. This will relate to the pointing arrow mentioned above. 2 other letters on a slant below, with one intersecting the bottom line of the rectangle, are the Numidian letters SCOH, meaning continue on. Thus the inscription is bilingual according to Fell. More directional markers are found to the south, or downriver. There Schiller and Murphy had found a carved boulder slanted against another stone and the bank, as if forming an entrance to a shelter. 2 symbols there resemble windows, the first 2 horizontal panes, the second with 2 vertical panes. Fell thought the first had been intended to be a symbol resembling the numeral 8, distorted to a more easily carved squarish form. If this is correct, the symbol might transliterate to SB, meaning go on, or keep traveling. Alright, and so he's saying autograph of Syria and bilingual message deciphered by Fell, Turkey Mountain, Tulsa, Oklahoma, alright? Iberian Punic is what he was saying. Sturdy and Seb. Schuler and Murphy had also found another inscribed boulder. It was above and near the first large boulder by the railroad track. The 32-inch inscription on the large knee-high boulder consisted of several letters, each 4 to 5 inches high. It may have been made by the same person who carved the message near the tracks, as one of the symbols repeats the bisected oval found there. The symbols in the inscription are grouped like letters forming words. One group consisted of 3 letters, a backward L, the bisected oval, and a straight vertical line with a straight branch to the right. Figure 318, Fell stated that if intended for the slightly different Iberian Punic, WTD, read right to left, the words would mean sturdy, a man's name. Alright? And this is what he's saying, sturdy set. These are autographs or signatures, right? People tagging their name. Ancient graffiti in America, guys. It's been happening since ancient times. Graffiti, people tagging their name. These might be their tags, you know. These might be their nicknames or, you know, their tag names, you know. Straight up. To the right of these letters and slightly higher on the stone are two symbols, which at first glance resemble the numerals 2 and 9. But the 2 is not like our Arabic numeral 2, and the 9 is not closed, and the stem is curved far to the left. Fell stated that if not the numeral 2, then it may be the Iberian punic, read right to left, CB, or Seb, as in Sebedi, a common Semitic name meaning gift of God. These are bold diagonal slashes above each group of letters. Although their meaning is not understood, Fell and I think that the slashes suggest that both groups were made at the same time, and that the last group is not a modern numeral, the Piper. Flooding from the Simaron River in western Oklahoma has for centuries built up sediment layers under a cliffside covered with ancient inscriptions and petroglyphs. A very interesting carved face and body buried to the hips had apparently interested others before us who had removed the silt to the area of the feet. We attempted to photograph the bottom lines. This was difficult because of the cramped space and the dampness and discoloration of the stone. A tracing was made. The face was as crude as a jack-o'-lantern and had slanted eyes. It appeared to have a straight beard under a smiling mouth. The body had a small waist, like a female, and the calves were curved. Although we were used to almost all the figures in the area being phallic, still we could not agree that a long and crooked line between the legs indicated this, male or female. The figure had been called everything from a hermaphrodite to a mongoloid. Perhaps the letters above the head, 5 to 6 inches high above the 23-inch figure, would solve the mystery. All of the material collected was submitted to Fell. With his deep perceptiveness, after translating the Numidian script used for the Arabic words dansan, jinn, which is Berber Numidian, Fell said the figure is a flute player. The top row of 4 letters, reading left to right, is da zien, which means to tune a musical instrument, and the other letters reading top to bottom are jin, meaning melody or tune. So the translation becomes piping a tune. Petroglyph on the Simaron River, western Oklahoma. And this is what's on top of it. So the beard is a flute, and the line between the legs Fell suggests is a snake being charmed. It holds itself upright on one coil. One can imagine it swaying to the music like its old world counterparts. The reader may decide for themselves the gender of this figure. Nat, the Celt from Iberia. After Fell deciphered some of the inscriptions that Earl Swiverenson and I had recorded at Picture Canyon, Colorado, it was realized that it was important to enter the high cave above the image of Mars, as described in the chapter, The Graven Images. Very early on a Saturday morning in July 1975, after I took off from a small local airport in his two-seated Cessna, headed for Colorado, taking a gallon of liquid latex with us, about 3 hours later flying over a deserted part of western Oklahoma. There was an explosion in the plane. Both of us mentally said goodbye to dear life. Arthur, to his astonishment, found that he was still flying merrily along and all his instruments were behaving. The odor of ammonia filled the interior. The latex could not withstand the combination of altitude and heat from the sun and had flipped its metal lid. Luckily, it remained upright. Shortly afterwards, we landed on a small airport in Oklahoma Panhandle. We were met by a rancher's wife who generously had offered to assist us in our explorations. Later that day, we were back at Picture Canyon, accompanied by the lady, her ranch foreman, who acted as guide, and Bill Burchard, the editor of the official Oklahoma tourism magazine, Oklahoma Today, and his wife Clara Burchard. had already published his own articles on this unique area and was very interested in anything new. On this visit, we took a ladder. No time was lost in finding the enigmatic cave. Entering, we saw that it contained 3 tiers of levels and was so full of inscriptions and petroglyphs that we had to guess which was most important to record that day. It took another 6 or 7 trips to fully record everything, although we were to determine eventually that this large cave was also inscribed with Iberic, Numidian, Egyptian, alright, hieratic Egyptian. It was an ogham inscription, which first caught my attention. At the left of the entrance to the cave, on a knee-high vertical face of the stone wall, was incised an ogham inscription boldly spread out over 22 inches. A Celt from Iberia had written in his autograph. His full name was Nat McAn. Alright, the Macs. Over here in ancient America, Mac. Come on now. Who's the Chatan, the cat people, the cat tribe? Who was the Chatan? Highlanders? Come on now, did they come from ancient America? Autograph of Nat McAn, Picture Canyon, Southern Colorado. Nat was not too skilled as a writer, according to Feld. He apparently made his first N with vertical stemline before deciding to spell his name horizontally. Starting over with another N, Nat connected his letters vertically. Whoever taught Nat McAn his alphabet must have said that ogham strokes appear above, below, or through a stemline, but forgot to mention that short strokes should actually come to the stemline. Nat let part of his C intersected the stemline and combined the diphthong IA, an X shape, with the lower part of his second N. A possible H hangs by itself before the final N, which might have the sound of the last syllable, Han. But Nat did a very good job separating his letters, not only with spacing, but by slanting his ogham strokes differently. To emphasize the grouping in the same vein, he distinguished his last name from his first, placing them on different stem lines. Although some doubt can be cast on his autograph, it is readable if one allows for his deplorable handwriting. Alright, and now we're going to get Ross, the Watcher. Ross. In the same cave, also on the left but much higher, was another group of petroglyphs which resembled the shapes of birds. Most of this group hung over space, so only photographs could be obtained. On Labor Day 1975, I was taken by Feld to sites in Vermont and New Hampshire. At South Woodstock, Vermont, an eye symbol had been found among many important evidences by Byron Dix, our guide. At Mystery Hill, New Hampshire, the property owner Robert Stone had found an eye petroglyph. It was the same general shape, with the downward strokes resembling legs as the symbol in Picture Canyon that I had thought was a bird. When the Colorado shape was drawn for Feld, he said that this was the Egyptian hieratic symbol for the eye. The downward strokes indicated the path of tears. Returning later to the Big Picture Canyon cave with Schuler and Murphy, both of whom can apply a paint brush while leaning out over space, we obtained latex molds of the entire panel. He also recorded a nearby petroglyph with a similar shaped body which had been dubbed the four-legged bird. It resembled the swift roadrunner. This figure is discussed further in the chapter The Stone Menagerie. So, autograph of Ross, according to Phil. A few inches from the eye symbol, we also recorded another fainter form, which is very similar. This symbol was almost obliterated by modern graffiti, probably the initials of vandals. The underlying eye or bird is so damaged that it is difficult to know its true meaning. After studying the recordings from the entrance to the large cave, Fell identified the 10-inch long eye shape inscribed to his left as the name Ras, repeated 3 times, once each in Egyptian hieratic, Libyan Numidian, and Iberian Punic. Ras had apparently first cut the eye, which is the Egyptian hieratic word Rs, meaning watchful. Then inside the eye he wrote the Numidian letters, read from top to bottom Rs. This also means watchful or wakeful. Finally, to the left he repeated the same Numidian letters, and next to them is incised a North Iberian script, Payaka, which resembles the English letters Pik. In Iberian Punic, Payaka means early awake. Thus, we have a trilingual autograph in an area full of script from these three cultures. This translation has been previously published in Fell's book, America BC. The Ross trilingual panel placed high on the left side of the cave on an overhang is in a position that commands a view of the entire canyon floor to the right and left. Was Ross so named before the inscription was carved, or did he acquire the nickname Watchful because he kept vigil in this large cave, watching always for other visitors and potential enemies? Names from the Old World and the New World, Maba and Guem and Ross, written in 2 and 3 scripts, bold men slashing and pounding their names into permanent stone, a silent cry, "Remember me." I am glad to have had the opportunity for a part of the remembering, guys. These guys, they tagged their name way back in ancient time, and hey, here we go. We're seeing it, right? They're being remembered. The stone portraits, names go with faces. What did these ancient people look like? Already mentioned is the profile in Turkey Mountain with the pointed beard. All right, so he's trying to say, it's European because it has a beard, but we had people with beards here too. Again, America, true old world, every phenotype and all types of hair types. Other stone portraits have been recorded, 3 of which may be authentic. Although there is no proof, a possibility is indicated because of the style or provenance. 1 each from 3 adjacent states, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, are presented. The Oklahoma face, in 1971, Paula Hostens, age 9, and her 7-year-old sister Peggy were walking down the banks of Coal Creek in northern Tulsa, Oklahoma, on their way to school. Near a small bluff shelter, Paula saw a stone lying on the ground, with a face carved on it. As it was only 8 inches long, she picked it up and took it to her father, Paul Hastings, who preserved it. 4 years later, Pat Davis, daughter-in-law of Mr. Hastings, brought the carved face to my home, where photographs in a latex mold were made. The image is a bas-relief on sandstone, which is roughly oval in shape. The entire outline of the face is cut to a lower level, where there has been no attempt to eliminate 3 protuberances. The surface had not been smoothed before the features had been deeply cut, so it is rather rough. The face has a wide forehead, curved brows above oval eyes, a well-defined nose, and a very long upper lip. The wide mouth conveys a sober expression, unexplained in its faint horizontal line immediately below the nose, unless the artist cleverly portrayed 2 faces in one. If this faint line is considered the mouth, and the deep mouth line is considered at the bottom of the chin, then one sees an elderly countenance. As the deep cheek indentations extend to the wider mouth, the first expression describes is the most feasible. In 1985, colleague Richard S. Warner of Tulsa was requested to visit Hastings and inspect the site. Warner reported that the area is the former coal mining community of Dawson, now within the city limits of Tulsa. Coal Creek runs north into Bird Creek, then into Verdigris River, and then after many miles into the Arkansas River. The site of the find is actually only 7 miles in straight line from the Arkansas River in Tulsa. As the Tulsa creeks are subject to violent flooding, the face may have been repeatedly buried and exposed by water erosion. Warner searched the 15-foot bluff shelter, but he found no evidence of script, petroglyphs, or artifacts. He said the sandstone of the face is the same as the stone of the ledges near the shelter. His opinion of the sculpture is that the face is strong but not Indian. The strokes are weathered, although still plain, and the general style appears ancient. All right, so when they're saying Indian, because they're comparing, like what they say, Mongoloid phenotype. All right, so dodge the hijack. There is no way to definitely identify the portrait subject with the ancient visitors in the general area. But the discovery site is only a few miles from the entire Turkey Mountain complex described earlier in the chapter. The Arkansas face. In 1973, a young woman who lives near my hometown and Edwina Johnston reported that she had seen a carved face which had been brought in from the Ouachita Mountains in the yard of Emma Hilton of Mena, Arkansas, near the western state line. Hilton answered my letter of inquiry that the stone face had been found 1 mile southeast of Board Camp on Max Creek and invited me to come see it. A life-size face of a bearded man is surprisingly sculpted at the top end of a roundish column of stone, about 2 feet high. Also, a bas relief it depicts a face with rough hair above thin brows. Rough hair. They're talking about an afro, wiry, curly hair. Alright, woolly hair. Talking about rough, woolly hair. Alright, it depicts a face with rough hair above thin brows and a vertical wrinkle above the nose. The starting eyes are made of double ovals, small eye shapes within larger eye sockets, underlined by curves as if the man had baggy eyes. There's a short nose with nostrils, the mouth a slightly bow-shaped slit between mustache and lower lip, conveys an expression both benign and sincere. Chin whiskers extend up the cheek into a full beard. The ears are of unusual feature. They are very large, rounded, and flare out from the head, giving a width of 12 inches to the sculpture. This is wider than the length of the face, which is 10.5 inches from top to beard tip. 3 diagonal slashes below the beard may represent a neck. The entire visage suggests an authoritative middle-aged man. The Hilton family is of the opinion that the carving had been broken off from a ledge by Max Creek. After flowing for 2.5 miles, this creek runs into Board Camp Creek and then into the Wachito River. This river runs south into Louisiana and then enters the Mississippi River. Within the Board Camp area is another clue, which might indicate the face is the portrait of an ancient visitor. About 7 miles to the south is the Cossatot River, where clean water forms deep, clear pools which are a delight for swimmers. In 1968, a Louisiana attorney, Wellman Jack, and his friend Professor J.R. Brannon of Panola Junior College of Texas saw a stone by the banks of this river inscribed with strange script. It was embedded into the bank, and they did not attempt to pry it loose. A rapidly approaching storm interfered with the proper exposure for the one photograph they had time to make, using a penny matchbox for scale. According to this scale, the stone is approximately 14 inches long, 9 inches wide at one end, and 12 inches wide at the other. Letters, which are about 4 inches tall, are in a scattered pattern. Alright, and this is one of the stone faces, cast of a stone face in Arkansas. And he's saying rough hair, right, and the beard. Alright, and you guys can see. So, rough hair. The out-of-focus photograph inspired 3 searches for the stone, assisted by Schuler. Finally, Brannon met us to search. He pointed out the exact spot by a large rotten tree, but the stone had disappeared. It is assumed that someone who came to picnic or swim carried the stone away. The hope is that it may eventually be located and accurately recorded, as the script, as far as can be ascertained, is very similar to Iberic. Alright, and now it says here the Missouri face. A very artistic and expressive bas-relief face carved in limestone was the property of Amos Rowley of Putto, Oklahoma. It had been found by his cousin Howard Rowley in a cave near Knoll, Missouri. Knoll is located in the Ozark Mountains, in the extreme southwestern corner of the state near Springfield, in the west of Wheeler Stone, which said in Iberic, "No trespassing." As inscribed in the chapter, they claimed the land. Knoll is on the rippling, sparkling Elk River, a tributary to the Neosho and Arkansas rivers. The exact year of the discovery is unknown. Neither has it been learned whether the face was separate piece of part of the cave wall. The finder built it into stone fence at his residence, but the fence later decomposed during a flood. The sculpture lay under a bush for some years until obtained by Rowley, who built it into a wooden frame and exhibited it at Poto, Oklahoma. After seeing the stone face in 1952, I borrowed it for a study and proper recording. Rowley kindly extended the loan for 10 years. All right? He took it for 10 years. Stone Face, Missouri. A smooth curved 8-inch countenance of a young man is part of a 15-inch stone, the upper part of which seems to represent a turban or headdress. Alright, turban or headdress. You heard that? The artist had prepared the surface to sculpt the face by smoothing the surface of the stone. The most striking feature is the expression, one of extreme cruelty. There is a thin, turned down mouth, a long, thick nose, and narrowed eyes, which seem to follow one around the room. Under heavy brow ridges, the eyes are large protruding ovals within horizontal slits into which are drilled holes to represent pupils. The skin appears mottled due to spots of lichen, which remain on the stone. At the hairline is an incised V or X, perhaps to denote a part of the hair. One can only speculate on the personality that inspired this portrait and his origin. He certainly does not appear to be an American Indian. Why not? We had every phenotype here. During 10 years he dominated my entry hall with his malicious stare. I was glad the face was only a stone. After the demise of Rowley, his widow Pearl was asked if this stone could be purchased. She said that it would be a gift, but when she and her family searched, it had disappeared from an outdoor storeroom. It is hoped that its present whereabouts may be ascertained so that it can be deposited in a museum. Ancient people were here. If these are truly their portraits, then it is easier to accept them as real, breathing, intelligent people. The most intelligent and sophisticated people recorded were those who left multicultural inscriptions and petroglyphs in a group of small caves in western Oklahoma. The records they left will be described in the next 2 chapters. Alright? And those are going to be 2 more videos. Alright? We're going to end it right here. So it's going to go into, look at that, the Anubis Cave discovery and development. Alright? And some of the sources for what we just read again. So this is a very scholarly book. I hope you guys thought it was amazing, what they're finding here again. In plain sight. Old world records in ancient America. Alright? So check out the setup here. We got a couple light bulbs. Yeah, battery operated. We got the light, Get the setup here for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, this reading of chapter 3 of this book. Thanks for tuning in once again. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Listen to me read. Hey, we're getting better at it. We're getting a little better at it. Hey, bear with us. We were kind of like recording, without me using a headset or anything like that. So if it got noisy or it got a little weird or you couldn't see it good, hey, so I appreciate your understanding of that. More proof America's a true old world. They're finding all this right here, guys. We got more videos coming. Okay? Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawa, hawa, hawa.